Good evening, everybody in Alberta, Canada, and beyond. It is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023, and I'm Kerry Lambert, and I welcome you to an online webinar, Evening of Solutions for a New Alberta, brought to you by the Alberta Prosperity Project, also known as APP. APP's purpose is to educate, inspire, and unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect their prosperity, individual rights, freedoms, and sovereignty by empowering the Alberta government to restructure Alberta's relationship with Canada. Of course, we couldn't do this without your help. If this is your first time watching, welcome, and I hope you find this information engaging and want to find out more. And if you're a regular APP webinar viewer, thank you. Thank you for your support, and we couldn't do this without you. APP is membership driven with a goal of 1 million plus members to help steer the political process. And we've been asked if you have to be Albertan to join APP. No, and in fact, we encourage anyone to join, especially if you believe in freedom and are watching what's going on in Alberta and Canada. APP memberships are 1 year for $20, 2 years for $30, 3 years for $40, or you can make a donation now at albertaprosperityproject.com. And if you go on to that site, we also have a list of events that are going on right now. And we are currently doing our ambassador tour on the weekends. This weekend, we are in Grand Prairie and Peace River. So if you happen to be there and you want to see Corey Morgan talk about his book, The Sovereignist Handbook, that would be amazing. And here you can sign up and find out some more information about that. And we're also asking people to register for the petition to establish Alberta's independence. And that you can go to bit.ly/ABVoteYes, or you can even scroll down just to the bottom of this page here to jump to there. And we need 600,000 signatures, and we are on our way. It's 13,758 as I updated today, and we will slow and surely get there. But you know what? All we need to do is have one person tell two friends, and two friends, and they tell two friends, and you know that whole hair commercial sort of idea there. One thing I did want to say is that what we really enjoy is having people actually come out and not only attend the events, but to share these webinars. Due to the new Canadian censorship laws, I'm unable to show news links, and I'm not even sure if we're actually news, but we're unable to show the links in online social content. So we do ask if it's possible that you do share. So having said all that, tonight's episode is called Digitization of the World. I'm just going to go back to this page here. Tonight's episode is called Digitization of the World, and my guest is Sharon Polsky, President of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, as well as being part of many privacy and digital committees. I'm sure she will be talking to you about that. And we, just so you know, we were hoping to have APP's interim CEO, and of course my compadre Christopher Scott join us. However, he has a personal matter to attend to this evening, so we hope that he will be back next week. And of course, this is a live webinar, so we encourage you to ask questions and make comments throughout this presentation. Just put 3 question marks before your question, so it'll be flagged and we can quickly view the questions. And with that, I am going to bring on Sharon right now. Hello, Sharon. How are you tonight?
I'm wonderful, enjoying the lovely Christmas weather we have today.
Oh, you are definitely in Calgary as well, or at least Alberta.
That I am.
I just got off the phone talking with people in Manitoba, and they're getting the weather too. So it's definitely, end of October. As soon as you get close to Halloween, you're rolling the dice as to whether or not the kids will have a white Halloween or not. So
absolutely.
One thing, so obviously we were looking at your history, your credentials. Wow, it's quite impressive. So you're president of the aminacorp.ca. Is that a good way to pronounce it? President of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, Privacy by Design Ambassador with more than 30 years of experience advising corporations and governments, as well as parliamentary, Senate, and legislative committees about privacy and access matters. So you definitely know your stuff, and that's why we like having people that can educate our viewers as to what's going on. And of course, we're talking about privacy and digitization tonight. And obviously, one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on is because Sharon has been invited to speak at the parliamentary committee that's studying Bill C-27, the update of the federal privacy law, and asking what it's about, what impact it will have on Albertans, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll obviously get to that, but maybe we should just get a little bit more background. So how did you even get involved in dealing with privacy, and how long have you been doing this? And 30 years, but how did you actually get involved?
For me, it was somehow just a natural progression. I started off working in law firms. I'm not a lawyer. I was a member of the Bar Association until I let my membership lapse just a couple of months ago. So for 20 years? But I'm not a lawyer. I've taught lawyers this stuff. I have taught judges, because nobody teaches this. But early days, right. I saw how cavalier the lawyers I worked with were about information. Computers on desktops were relatively new, and they would take a computer home, take software home. They didn't know what they were doing with it. They'd blow up a program and not know how to fix it. That was one thing. And then one day I remember walking past, there was a stationery room. It was like a big broom closet, really, with stacks of shelves full of the paper, the letterhead that had come back from the printer, because that was before you could actually do the graphics easily on your computer and just print it off yourself. So you had a stationery room and the printed envelopes and the letterhead. And at the back of the room, one day I noticed there was a box. It was a piece of equipment. It was, I don't know, maybe 18, 20 inches wide, a couple of inches, about 6 inches high, maybe 15 inches deep. And there was tractor feed paper, which is just this hundreds of pages of paper, all connected with perforated edges, so you could rip one page off, and little tracks on the side to fit in sprockets. It would feed into the machine, get printed, and just cascade down on the floor. And I went in and I looked, and on each row, and this is long before we had such a thing as call display, every row had the name of the caller, the number they were calling from, how long the call was, what local they were calling inside the office, whose local it was inside the office. Well, isn't that interesting? It was call display records of the caller and whose account that was. That was one of the very first things that twigged me that something's going on. Then I saw that laws are starting to come into effect. Primarily it started in Canada, in Quebec. They are distinct in many ways, including because they are the first one to have brought in privacy legislation. And then other jurisdictions in Canada did also. And to me, like I say, it was just a natural progression. I've always been curious about things. I've always asked why. And then when it came to this technology and, things like, I was helping to develop training and quality assurance for things that we now refer to as, well, not all-in-one devices, that's printers, but these handheld computers before they were what we now use. And I thought it was the greatest thing. No longer have to have a day timer or a Rolodex or a card file. Everything could be all in one place. Except I did my research and realized that, first of all, there's no security on them. So my entire life will go into one of these things, and what happens if it's lost or stolen? It vanishes. This was very, very, very early days of a cell phone, 1998, 99. I also, in the process of research, found that as the signal was being converted from analog to digital to go up into the cell network, there was that tiny little moment in time where the signal was not encrypted. They knew about that. I don't know that it was ever fixed. So that vulnerability is still there. So it lets anybody in, which makes it all the easier, not only for the good guys, but for the bad guys to get in. So, I mean, the whole thing has just been fascinating for me. And no matter where I go, whether it's a speaking engagement, a conference, a client in government, private, whatever, the issues really are very much the same, regardless of the environment. And everybody looks around and goes, yeah, but we use these computers. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Do you really? You know how to turn it on? You know how to use it as a productivity tool? Do you know much about the security? Or do you call the help desk? Do you call a company because you've heard of the name and it's name recognition, but maybe you do? Have you ever asked, what are their credentials? What does it take to actually work for this company? More than an interest in computers. All of these things. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And you were just kind of describing about how call displays showed up, and we were all excited because then we knew whether or not to answer the phone or not. And it's amazing how far we've come from there, because now when was the last time, like, I know I try and answer my phone, and I know everybody else does, but when someone calls and you don't know what the number is, you just say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And so we're kind of implementing our own privacy. But I guess the big question with that is who's in charge of all of these data records?
Isn't that a good question?
Yeah.
And when it comes to providing your own privacy with a phone, I do the same thing. Every afternoon at 4:00, I get a call from what appears to be a local number.
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't know anybody else with the same prefix that I have in this city. So it's bogus. Or I will just answer, not say a word, and never, ever, ever say the word yes.
That's
because then, especially now that we have deep fake technology, they can take the word yes and say, well, of course she said yes.
Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
How can I help you?
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, that's right.
Is this Sharon Polsky? How can I help you?
Yeah.
What do you want? That's all. But here's a tidbit, and I've tested it. If you conceal your phone number when you make a call, whoever you're calling, if they have a service that says your phone call can't go through, it's blocked, reveal your number, that's one thing.
Oh, yes, that's right.
If you're calling an 800 number and you block your number, it doesn't matter. They see your number anyhow.
Is that right? Wow.
Yep. I've tested it a few times on different 800 numbers. Yeah.
And you're right. Even when I phone my bank and it's a 1-800 number, they know exactly who I am. You're right. Not that I've blocked my bank, but you're right. Like they know exactly who you are right away.
Mm-hmm. And who owns the data? Well, it depends who you ask.
Yeah.
And who should own it? Again, it depends who you ask and what your perspective is.
Yeah. And of course, that's going to be a big topic that we'll be talking about today. But maybe we'll just jump into a little bit about you're going next week to talk to the Parliamentary Committee about C27. So maybe tell our viewers what C27 is, and I'll kind of bring up a little bit of a blurb here.
Okay, C27. Now, keep in mind, in Canada, we've got federal jurisdiction, we've got provinces, and we've got the territories. Each jurisdiction has public sector privacy. In Alberta, we've got a FOIP legislation, Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection, that applies to the public sector. So the government, schools, hospitals, that sort of thing. Every province has the same thing for the public sector. At the federal level, there's also legislation that applies to the public sector, the Privacy Act and the Access to Information Act. When it comes to the private sector, many of the provinces have privacy legislation as well that applies only to the private sector. At the federal level, it's the acronym is PIPEDA, the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. Canada's never been great at making law with great sounding acronyms like the States, but they'll get there maybe one day. PIPEDA applies to the private sector in federally regulated industries, so broadcasting, air, rail, that sort of thing. Yeah. And it applies to the territories. It came into force in 2001, its first phase. It was fully in effect in 2004, so almost 20 years.
Okay.
Nothing's changed in 20 years. And the law, nothing substantive. Yeah. But technology, of course, has raced along. Absolutely. And a lot has changed there. So it's outdated. A couple of federal privacy commissioners ago, Jennifer Stoddard when she said she wasn't going to accept a reappointment of the position, said, I remember her being on stage saying, the PIPEDA could use a little more teeth. That was tough talk for her. Really, really, really. It basically is pretty toothless, but it's very much like so many pieces of privacy legislation that say an organization isn't allowed to refuse to provide you the good or service only because you refuse to allow them to collect your personal information. But that's exactly what happens. They say, give us your personal information or go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, what personal information? Well, the personal information we're going to collect because we need it. For what? Well, for business purposes and to provide you with a better viewing experience. Okay, and what exactly is a business purpose? To me, it's anything that improves the bottom line that's not illegal. That's a legitimate business purpose because that's why a for-profit company is in business, is to improve their bottom line. It's vague language. What has happened in the process is you go on a website, you click I agree.
Yes.
Most people
to a cookie
don't
or
read
whatever.
stuff. Yeah, I agree. You don't know what you're agreeing to, but what it has caused is a brand new industry that has developed over the past 20 years, the data broker industry. Because you click I agree, which gives full license, really. It's taken as license for the companies, the websites that you're visiting, to give your information to other companies, to their affiliates, whoever that is.
Yeah.
Wow. And what do? You don't have a direct relationship with these data broker companies, but they're buying and selling and trading. They're getting bids from advertisers to show the ad to you. So when Facebook says we don't sell your information, that's accurate. They don't sell it. They accept a fee for presenting an ad to you. Very careful wording. So all of this has been going on. And it's great for business. It's great for commerce. It's not so great for you and me and our privacy. So in Ottawa, they, after many reports to Parliament, after many consultations, after commissioner and privacy advocate and civil libertarian after civil libertarian has said, please change it to give Canadians a genuine, real right of privacy. It's not enshrined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's a UN declaration from long ago, 1948, but it's not recognized as a fundamental freedom in Canada. Please, finally, legislate it, recognize it as a fundamental human right in Canada, change the law to update it, and that's exactly what Bill C-27 is. Problem is, it's a three-part piece of legislation. First part is to update PIPEDA. Great. There's some good parts about it. The title refers to Canadians as consumers. It is the Consumer Privacy Act. So we are all treated as consumers first and foremost, not as individuals with a privacy right. The second part creates a new tribunal. So imagine you have a complaint about an organization. You lodge that complaint with the Federal Privacy Commissioner, who investigates, says, yep, now I can levy a fine. I recommend a $100,000 fine.
Yeah.
Wait, now it goes to this new tribunal that's going to have a look, and they'll decide, yes, 100,000 is fair. No, it should be less. It should be more. There shouldn't be any. Let's say they agree $100,000. And they say, company, you did wrong, $100,000 fine. The first part, the updated PIPEDA, gives us a private right of action, so we can sue the company once the tribunal says yes, and the company exhausts its recourse. So it can take it to court and then appeal it and appeal it and appeal it. However much they can, because there's legal recourse. So our former privacy commissioner, the previous one to who we have now, said that he figures it'll delay justice by 7 to 10 years. And then assume the last appeal is exhausted and the court says, yes, company, the commissioner was correct, the tribunal was correct, pay that $100,000. You did wrong. Yeah. I, the person, assuming I'm still alive, I still have my faculties.
Yeah.
We're talking years down the road, Now I get to hire a lawyer, go out of pocket, sue them, and you know what? Go through the whole appeal process again. So another, 2, 5, 7, 10 years?
Yeah.
Then the third part. So I have my doubts about how workable and how effective and how useful that portion will be. The third part is AIDA, or AIDA, the Artificial Intelligence Data Act, which they're trying. It's a gesture to say we recognize that we have to do something because AI is now rampant. It's in every part of our lives, completely unregulated. We've got to do something. Other jurisdictions, other countries have put in AI legislation. We're behind the eight ball. We've got to do something. We haven't defined exactly what it is. We're not sure, but we're going to regulate it and say that it can't be used by the private sector unless it's the private sector doing work on behalf of the government. It doesn't regulate the government's use of AI, and regulations to actually give the fine details, we're told might be available in a couple of years. So that's where that one stands. It's under study by the committee, and they've had some amazing speakers, people who really, really know their stuff, from privacy, from civil liberties, and from industry. So it's going to be interesting to see what the committee does. And I'm looking forward to talking with them next week.
So you're going in and basically just are you giving suggestions, or are you talking to them about how to make changes or anything, or are you basically going in there and just kind of saying this is the way you interpret it?
Yes to all of the above. Now,
Okay.
I haven't spoken before this committee before. I've spoken before other parliamentary committees, and as far as I know, they operate very much the same. A witness gets 5 minutes to say whatever they want, and then there's questions and answers from the members of parliament who are on the committee or the associate members of the committee, and questions can be anything. They can throw anything at you. So there's a 5-minute statement, and it'll be similar to what I just said, acknowledging that it is a good effort. It is absolutely necessary. But it has a ways to go before it's something that will actually provide genuine privacy for Canadians.
Well, hopefully they accept what you're saying, because looking at the webpage here, it says it's already done the first reading and second reading, and now it's in consideration of committee. So, and then after that, then it goes to Senate, I'm assuming. Is that the
first reading, second reading, it goes to committee. There's a third reading, it goes to Senate. No matter what the committee says, no matter what the senators say, they can suggest all the changes they want. I've seen where that happens, and then a bill goes back to the House of Parliament, and the government says, thank you very much. We have consulted Canadians, and we're doing what we want anyhow.
Wow.
But the important thing is that there's greater awareness now, and these comments from me and from all the other witnesses are on the record now.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. Well, I know even when, now this is of course through the government, so what I'm going to say didn't really apply for government, but there was the National Citizens Inquiry in regards to how the whole COVID situation went, and vaccine mandates and all that. And there was a committee put together through what was supposed to be the federal government. That didn't happen through the government, so it ended up being a national private citizens inquiry. And all this stuff is on record, right? And the important thing is that it's on record. And even with your case, it will be on record, but it will be on record with the government, right?
It's on record with the government, but the committees publish reports, and those are readily available. You just do a search of Parliament, and the reports will come up.
Yeah.
If you have a keyword, whether it's spyware, facial recognition, transportation, justice, whatever the keyword you're looking for, it is there. But I think it was Prime Minister Harper's government actually that said we are going to consolidate all of the Government of Canada's many, many web pages, and we're going to present the most popular ones, which when I see that, it also tells me that we're going to make the rest of them less readily available. We're going to bury them. And that's dangerous because if it's only the popular stuff, how do you know what else there is? How do you know the questions to ask? And we need to start asking some questions, informing ourselves so that we can ask tough questions and know that when we get an answer, whether that answer is legitimate or a fantasy.
So kind of censorship using privacy, really, because I mean, that's kind of, that's, if you're hiding something, no matter what you're doing, it's censorship, right?
Well, that's a matter of perspective these days in particular, because I think it was the January 7th, the day after the insurrection in Washington, D.C. Yes. I remember Prime Minister Trudeau saying, this is something, what happened in D.C. cuts at the very heart of democracy. It was organized online, and to protect democracy in Canada, because we can't possibly allow that sort of thing to happen in Canada, we have to control what is on the internet to protect democracy.
Yeah.
And I thought, and war is peace and hate is love? Really, it's like, this is mind-boggling. But he told us exactly what he was planning to do.
That's
and
right.
Now we have that, because we have Bill C-18 that went through to say that the platforms have to pay an unknown amount that could put them broke. They don't know. There's no way of telling. So they said, no, Canada is more nuisance than it's worth. We're just not going to put links up. You can still get your news, but you'll have to go to the source.
Directly.
We're not going to make it easy. We have new law coming in Canada. The EU is maybe having second thoughts. The UK 2 weeks ago, they just passed what they call the Online Safety Act. Wonderfully euphemistic title to it. And basically, it's very much like, if you remember back in 2011, 2012, Vic Taves was Canada's justice minister. And they were trying to push through lawful access legislation to give the RCMP the tools they need to be able to protect children from online predators. It's always about the children.
Yeah.
I have children. I want them to be safe online, of course, but not at the expense of everybody. And that's exactly what's going to happen, because if you create a backdoor for the police, it's a backdoor that's open for anybody to exploit. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But it's always for the children. And how do you argue against that? Of course, everybody, and if you question it, obviously you don't like children. Or you do like Vic Taves did, and he said, you're either with us or you're with the predators. And that basically got him laughed out of Ottawa. He went to sit on the bench in Manitoba. And I'm sure those words ring in his ears. I remember them well, because that's a problem. In Britain, the Online Safety Act is very much like the so-called chat control legislation that the EU was about to vote on this week, until it came to light that the technology companies and their lobbyists had a part to play in writing the legislation. So that scandal brought the legislation to a screeching halt. Canada still has it in the works, and different pieces of legislation have components of it that altogether will amount to, we can still pound our keyboards. It's not going to affect our right to free expression.
Yeah.
The government isn't going to stop us. The government isn't going to censor us. So the charter works because it only protects us against government overreach. What's going to happen, though, is the government, with these new laws, are going to tell the platforms that generally are outside of Canada to block whatever the government doesn't want made available in Canada. So it's an end run around our charter. And now it's going to be up to the companies, the platforms, the ISPs, to decide, are they going to comply? Are they at risk of fines if they don't comply? If they're outside of Canada, I don't know that it really matters to them. Or, what, Meta was fined $400 and some million back in November. Yeah. That would put me broke. It would put me in the grave. To them, it's not even lunch money. So
That's,
it's going to be interesting to see what the companies do.
and of course, I was going to bring up what are the differences in laws between Canada and the UK and Europe, and are they doing any of these sorts of like an equivalent of C27?
To update privacy, well, in Europe, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, came in 2018. And that very quickly became the global standard, the de facto standard. And it was much better than what Canada had in PIPEDA. It also had international reach, and it was good. The consent provision was a bit better, but really not a whole lot better. The companies said this is going to be a huge burden, and it did force them to comply and to take an inventory of the personal information they collect, how they use it, how they distribute it, who they share it with, where in the world it goes. And you might have heard about Max Schrems, the Austrian law student who's now a lawyer. And several years ago, he said, hang on a second, Facebook is here. And they take my personal information to the States, where you've got the Department of Homeland Security. Right. I, as a non-American, have no right to recourse. That is contrary to the GDPR. He brought it to court. It took many years. Yeah. And the courts in Europe said, you're right, Mr. Schrems, absolutely. So the US basically had to figure out how to do it so that American companies could receive and process the information from European companies.
Okay. So even if you were to buy something and they want to take your email or your phone number or anything like that, and you're buying from Europe and you're buying something in the States, what happens with that information? Like, are they allowed to share that information? That might be a very specific question because there's so many variables, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, you look at any website, there's a couple of things I do when I go on a website. Before I even go to the website, I open up a little search tool that I have. It does a very quick scan to show what sort of cookies are on there. Is the website using keystroke logging? Are they logging my mouse movements? Do they use Google Analytics? Do they use something called Facebook Metapixels? And you go on a website, even before you see the website, if they use metapixels, the fact that you're there has already been disclosed to Facebook. And you say, okay, but they don't know who I am. But they do, because it is your IP address, which often doesn't change.
Yeah.
And it is the unique identifier of your phone, your tablet, your
Mac address. Or, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And that does not change. And it doesn't take them a lot to figure out that this MAC address from this IP or that IP, it's still the same person. And then when you fill out a form, you've given them your name, your phone number, your email address. They compile all of that, even if you don't have a Google or a Facebook account. So they know who you are. They know where you're going. They know what you buy. So have you given consent? No.
Yeah. So is this part of the whole... Hey, I was looking for lawnmowers the other day and happened to be in Lowe's, and now when I'm logging into my Facebook and I see all the ads for lawnmowers.
That's very much part of it. Now, I use a variety of ad blockers, and I also use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different browsers, and I have a couple others that I use on occasion. And I use one for some things and another one for other things. And I have the privacy settings different on each one. So very often a website won't work in one, but it will work in another. Most people, they use a computer, and they don't know about these things that are readily available. But then you go out to find an ad blocker. Which one do you get?
Yeah.
How do you know what's reliable? What's not a scam? These days, it really is hard to tell. So I use these things. I do what I can. I know how the game is played. I know that it's maybe a fool's errand and a waste of my energy, but I'm not just going to roll over and say, yeah, sure, have at it.
Yeah.
I refuse.
Yeah. It's
too important.
And of course, we're, even what I end up using is a VPN, and I use ExpressVPN. Not that I'm not saying you should use it. I'm just saying that anybody, if you're looking for VPN, what are your takes on that? Because one of the reasons why I do that is because if I'm looking for commercials or videos or something, say in the States, and of course you can't see them from Canada, then I just pretend I'm in the States using the VPN, right? And does that work in terms of privacy, or do they still see? They don't see my IP address, but do they see my my Mac or my equipment? Yeah, of course they do.
They do.
Yeah.
I was recently in Japan just a couple of weeks ago speaking at the UN Internet Governance Forum, and my co-panelist was the co-founder of the Tor network, the Tor project.
Oh, yeah.
And he was terrific. And I mean, you might have heard Meredith Whittaker from Signal, which is the fully end-to-end encrypted messaging system. She has been very, very vocal, saying that with the British and the EU legislation that basically is going to require platforms to break encryption, to provide these backdoors, she said, we will not. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We will pull our service from your countries rather than build a backdoor, because it is technically not possible to build a backdoor that's only available for some people, but not for others.
That makes sense. Wow.
And Roger from Tor Project, he said very much the same thing. And he said, it wouldn't matter if you threatened to put me in jail. We will not change that.
Yeah.
That's somebody who is, I mean, his integrity is amazing. And Meredith also. They understand what the risks are. But Tor is not a VPN. It's when you log on. And I've used it for the same reason you have. I might be logging on from Germany or Afghanistan or Italy. There's no telling where in the world you're actually logging on from. And it makes it very, very difficult for anybody to trace who you are and where you're coming in from, because the signal is bounced from private computers to private computers around the world. Yeah. No telling how many hops, no telling how many different personal servers it goes through. So you want to track me? Good luck.
Yeah. So here's a question too. What about, so if I'm looking for lawnmowers, great. What happens if we have kids, and the kids end up going on and doing something? And number one, I guess, if they're searching while I'm doing stuff or using my account, but I'm more specifically worried about what they're looking for under their own account. And so are there any privacy laws or anything in regards to kids?
For children, of course.
Yeah.
In the States.
In the States, but not in Canada.
Well, you see, that's a catch. In Canada, everybody has the right to privacy.
Yeah.
It doesn't specify as of what age. Different provinces, Alberta, you're legal at 18 years old. I think Ontario is 19? It used to be 21 in some provinces. So it's 18, 19. I think there's a couple places still 21. In Bill C-27, they're talking about minors. Well, what's a minor? The age of consent for sexual activity was raised from 14 to 16, but you're still a minor. And if you do something, you know, if I have a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old who says, I can't live here, I'm out of here, and becomes a street kid, I'm still responsible for them. But with other matters, especially some that you hear in the media these days, a parent doesn't have any say. The child is emancipated. When it comes to online, and we've certainly heard of some absolutely horrendous things, and children killing themselves because of what goes on the internet. And once it's out there, you can't stop it.
That's right.
So kids are, I mean, angsty teenagers to begin with, and then they get embarrassed online. People tease them, and you're never going to live it down because it's out there forever. You didn't believe your parents when they warned you, and now it is. And oh my God, I can't do anything. I'm embarrassed. I can't tell my parents. I can't fix it. And kids have taken their own lives because of it. And that really is tragic. Yeah. But law isn't going to stop it. Law hasn't stopped it, because the people who, whether it's predators or people with the means, money, and motivation to create deep fakes and synthetic porn, as it's now called, completely artificial, but it looks and acts like pornography or child porn, they're still going to do it because they disregard the law in the first place. Yeah. So the law is, yes, it has to change, But the law is not going to change human nature.
Mhm.
It's not going to change psychology. It's not going to change how people behave in large measure. Or we really wouldn't have people running a red light or a stop sign. There wouldn't be any murders or assaults. Law would change it, but law doesn't protect us. Law
Yeah.
just tells us how to behave or what to do, what not to do.
Yeah, you're right. And I've said many, many times, the thing that I've got an issue with in terms of law is it comes down to you either go to court and you get a fine or a jail sentence, but there's a certain amount of time within that, and there's a certain way that people can get off, and it's sad to know that we can actually be in a situation where kids can be kids can be in a situation where they don't really want to be into. Maybe they've posted a picture of their face, and the next thing you know is that face is put on something else, and it's horrible, right?
It is.
And how do we even prevent that from even happening? Is it the parents' responsibility? Is it the school's responsibility to have some sort of privacy application in effect?
Well, I've taken a couple steps back. If
Yeah.
the government really is concerned about children, then it's up to the government, the people who are in
Yeah.
government, the people who are our elected representatives, to make the changes necessary so that, again, privacy is a fundamental right, so that the public policy funds education and requires proper education about all of this.
Yeah.
Ask anybody these days, how is a law made? I
That's
don't know.
true. That's true.
They don't know. Who makes laws? I don't know. Where do laws come from? I don't know. Back in before literacy was a thing in Western Europe and then in North America, the church, the elite, the rich people, they are the ones who were allowed to learn how to write and how to read.
That's right. Exactly.
And they are the ones who controlled the messaging. If I can't read and write, you can tell me whatever you want. I have no way of verifying it. I can't refute it. I don't know. And think of it, we've had desktop computers for almost 50 years now.
Yeah.
Has there been really any education? No. So how can the parents and the teachers teach today's children when they themselves probably don't know a whole lot about it?
Yeah.
Or they make assumptions. I mean, I can tell you one about the family. And whether it's cars or law or jail, we can talk about artificial intelligence, predictive policing, and how people are thrown in jail because the artificial intelligence got it wrong. This has already happened in countries around the world. I have grandparents who fled Russia. Well, I call it Russia. I don't know where the borders were at the time, but I just call it Russia. They fled after the Russian Revolution. And actually, I have a little folder on my desk as a reminder. It's somebody's Russian identity card. It's embossed with CCCP. Just a little reminder. So they fled and they came to Canada and freedom, and it was wonderful life. And they worked like dogs to scrape a living from a rocky piece of useless land. And my grandfather built a shack, and they had children, and of course one died because kids died then in their early years. And he worked and raised a family, and then there was my parents, myself and my siblings. Great. I have a nephew. His mother studied history for her undergrad. She became a lawyer. My nephew studied history for his undergrad. He became a teacher. One day I am visiting my parents. There's my nephew sitting in front of my mother's computer, and she had a screen, one of these great large ones. And I look over his shoulder and said, "Is that family tree?" I said, "Yeah." "Is that me?" "Yeah, you're the only Sharon in the family."
Yeah.
And my birthday and husband and his birthday and children and my husband's side of the family. And it's like, I didn't want that on the internet. I didn't want it there. And I mean, by this time he's in his mid-20s, and he whipped around and gave me a look like, oh, you old bag. I said, so what happens? Where is it? Oh, it's on Ancestry. Okay. And that's what, by subscription? Yeah. And what happens when you don't pay the subscription? Oh, it's saved. Really? Where? Oh, Ancestry keeps it. And I'm thinking, you studied history. Do you not understand how information is used? You studied World War II. Do you not remember?
They now know all your family.
The Germans used, do you know what this is?
I'm afraid to even ask, but obviously
it's a punch card.
Yeah. That I knew it was a punch card, but what's the data on it? Is that
no, this is a modern one. This is from this is from a company in Calgary.
I thought maybe it was Auschwitz or something like that. And
this is rudimentary technology, and that was enough for IBM to help the Germans catalog entire populations. Now we have people paying for the privilege of spitting in a vial so their DNA can be analyzed. And did I mention that nephew? His father did just that. He paid for the privilege of spitting in the vial, having his DNA analyzed. Therefore, mine as well. He never asked me.
Wow.
And you heard that a couple of weeks ago, 23andMe in the States, their records were breached.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know how many, I haven't found out yet how many millions of records were breached, but I have heard that over 1 million records of people who the service identified as Ashkenazi Jews, those records are on the deep web for sale. Combined with what's going on in the Middle East now and on university campuses across North America, I can imagine those people are rather fearful these days.
Wow.
For Curiosity, as a company, made great profit, and other companies used it for research, which is something in Bill C-27. It allows research. It doesn't specify research by whom. So as long as the information is de-identified, you don't have an opportunity to consent or deny consent to your information being collected.
Yeah.
So as long as it's de-identified, but they can take your DNA and use it for research. Yeah. And even if it's de-identified, it can be re-identified really very easily.
So is there any way that you can tell whether or not the information is out there about yourself being used nefarious, or never mind, just is there a way that you can even just search to see if you've been hacked or just, your information is out there?
There are some things you can do. Yeah. I would not recommend venturing into the deep web. That is like the darkest alleys of a town, and you don't want to go there unless you actually know what you're doing, and most people don't. Leave it to the experts who that's what they do. Don't go onto the deep web. Yeah. But you can do things like go to Have I Been Pwned? Have HAVEIBENPWNED.com. Include that in the show notes, and that's a legitimate, credible site. It's operated by somebody high up in IBM in Australia. And he receives reports from people, verifies the credibility of the breach report, and he has for years now compiled the email addresses that have been involved in different hacks and breaches. Mm-hmm. And so you put in whatever email you use now, whatever email you used when, I don't know, MySpace was out.
Yes.
When
that's right.
Outlook Mail or Yahoo Mail or whatever these things were, 15, 20 years ago that we all had accounts for and we just don't use, but the accounts are still there. Very few people have ever canceled them. So cancel those accounts. And then have a look and see if your various emails have been hacked. First thing you do is change your passwords. Yes. Absolutely change your passwords. And some people say, go to a password manager in the cloud. I don't, because a cloud to me has always just been somebody else's computer.
That is true.
And I don't know, why should I trust you?
Yeah.
Why should I trust them? I'll trust me.
No, that's right. Because I even use a password app, but I have a little bit of a system in terms of how I generate passwords. But there are, if I'm logging into something that's a one-off kind of thing, my Mac will come up and say, is this password you want to use? And it's like, yeah, because I'm probably never going to log into that again, right?
Yep.
And so
Or
to remember,
DuckDuckGo is one of
yeah.
the web browsers, and they offer something where you can create a throwaway email address.
Oh, that's right. I've heard that. Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So it's whatever you want at duck.com, and it automatically forwards to you so that your identity is hidden. Of course, if you reply, then it comes from your real email address.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But then it's your choice if you choose to reveal who you are through that legitimate email address.
Yeah.
Do it much as I dislike Google products because they monitor everything. There are certain times where I will use them carefully, and I use it on a browser that is automatically set to eliminate, not accept cookies in the first place, eliminate cookies, and then I manually, as soon as I close it, I manually open it up again and clear the cookies and the cache.
Yeah.
That's how particular I am about it. But go in there and do a Google search of yourself.
Yeah.
And if you have nicknames or diminutives, if it's Robert, Bob, Bobby,
Yeah.
all the variations with middle initials or preceding initials, search for yourself. You might be very surprised what you find. Things that you made a comment 15 years ago, you forgot about, it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there.
That's crazy. One of the last bit of notes, a bit of a stretch in the topic, but we're at 52 minutes in here, and we want to have some time for question and answers. One of the notes was, are businesses allowed to monitor employees? And so here's a typical example. You're given a laptop or a phone from your company, and you're able to use it, for work, but you also want to have Netflix and do that. Are companies allowed to monitor that?
If it's a company device,
Yeah.
Don't expect privacy. It is their device.
Yeah.
But what happens if you choose to use your personal phone because you don't want to carry two? And they say, well, we're going to put endpoint software on it. We're going to monitor it. If it goes missing, we're going to delete everything on it, including everything personal on it. Make a choice. Either you get to accept that or carry two phones. That would be my choice, but I make my own choices. You make yours.
Yeah.
What happens though and here's a situation I had with a client. They wanted me to assess a piece of software they were going to be bringing in for their rolling stock, their graders, their trucks, their snow blowers, their snow plows, the dump trucks.
Yeah.
And it's to be able to report to the community that a grader went past on the main drag 20 minutes ago. It's going to be there at 11:15, so people can see where's a clear route so that I can get out and do what I have to do, that sort of thing.
Sounds legit.
And that's all fine.
Yeah.
They're not tracking the employee, they're tracking the vehicle, but the vehicle, to operate, the employee has to sign in with their employee number. And if it's a community where the employee is allowed to take the vehicle home at night, they might get called out in the middle of the night. Well, that vehicle is attached to the person, is tracking them. And never, ever is it to track the employee. It is for the employee's safety. It's not to track their productivity. It is for safety.
Everything's for safety. Yeah.
It's always for convenience for us or safety for them.
Yeah.
There's an office building in Toronto where they have to put up signs saying, smile, you're on camera, and if you have a problem with it, call wherever. Often the signage, either they haven't gotten around to putting it up yet, or it's hard to find, or it's a very small type over there at the other side. Imagine it's an office tower in downtown Toronto under CCTV scrutiny constantly, but there is a secret police division where there's confidential informants come in sometimes. And who gets to see the films from the CCTV cameras?
Yeah.
people's lives sometimes are put at risk. There's I don't want to say short-sightedness, but there's a lack of imagination sometimes to appreciate what the unintended consequences can be, and they can be really, really devastating.
Yeah. And I was going to say, no matter what law or a situation is put in place, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. And I guess what we should be trying to do is minimize those exceptions. And if we have proper laws that have actually been vetted properly and have the right wording to it, then things should be better in the long run. However, the last few years we've seen that we seem to have less and less privacy. We seem to have less and less freedoms, despite the fact that everyone says, well, we're back to normal again. And we haven't even touched on the whole privacy. My big concern is, of course, I deal with jukeboxes and arcade games and that. And before COVID, most of the money coming into the business was cash, because cash is really not traceable, right? Somebody's got a $20 bill and they put it in the machine. Nobody knows where that $20 came from. It comes in, gets reported or divvied up or however it is. And even going back, taking that money to the bank, you put money in, you put a few $1,000s in at a time, no questions asked. Now, if I come in there with cash, the first thing they ask is, where did this cash come from? And so that's part one. But part two is also, I have noticed, and again, just using my own personal experience, was pre-COVID, I would say 90% of the money going to the machines was probably cash, 10% credit card, app, or whatever it is, depending on the game. Now it's totally reversed. It is 90% credit card, app, and only 10% cash. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if people really realize that when they're using their credit card for something like that, it's also traceable. And you were at this particular machine and doing that. And they're willing to give that privacy up willy-nilly, really. They're fine. They're fine with it.
Most people don't realize they're giving their privacy up, that every transaction, every time you make a purchase, whether it's with your bank card or your credit card, it is being tracked. Yeah. Which is why, what was it, a few years ago, Target in the States sent pregnancy coupons for pregnancy products to a teenage girl. That blew the whistle. Her father found out she was pregnant before she knew. Why? Purchasing, the purchase records. And don't forget, COVID was an absolute opportunity. What's the saying? Never let a good crisis go to waste. That's where right. Everybody was pushed to, don't touch filthy lucre, use credit. It's touch-free. You won't get germs. Don't touch anything. Don't handle filthy cash. Don't touch a machine. Just tap ever so carefully from 6 feet away. Tap, and you can pay for it that way. Buy it online. It's much more convenient. Yeah. What they didn't talk about is that every transaction is being traced, and worse than that, never mind the buy local campaigns and people keep buying it with their credit card, which means a portion of the purchase goes to the credit card company.
2.5 to 5% easy. That's right.
Yeah. Purchase goes to the merchant. Yeah. The more we use digital, the more that plays right into the hands of industry and government that's saying, we're bringing in digital currency, central controlled digital currency, so that we can track who's buying what, when, and what happens if the people in central control look and say, you had pizza last week. We're not letting you order a pizza this week, but it's bad for your health.
That's right.
Because the experts have decided that too much cheese and you're eating too much cheese because you're ordering a cheese pizza. Yeah. That's what we're looking at with centrally controlled digital currency. And some people say, you get out from under your tin foil hat. I take that as a compliment now, because honestly, there's been so many times where I say, I hope I'm wrong. And I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And I've got a colleague, he did his PhD on central bank digital currency, and we've had great discussions about this. And it's exactly what he's been saying also, is the more we give up using cash, the more that plays into the hands of those who want to push the digital.
Yeah.
And it's going to come to a point where they say, here's digital. No one uses cash anymore. So obviously they want digital, or they would still use cash.
Yeah.
We need to use cash more often.
We definitely need to use cash.
And when I go to make a withdrawal and the teller at the bank says, oh, are you going away? What are you using the $2,000 for?
Yeah.
My answer, give me my cash, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Someone just posted that too. I'm just going to say that because it's, I must have lost that. But yeah, someone just said, people ask, what's the money for? And of course, even in mine, if I'm depositing, they're asking where it's coming from. It's never mind. It's tip money. Like, does it matter where it's come from?
No, but FinTrack, the government's agency to try and prevent and monitor money laundering and criminal activity, they say to the banks, report suspicious activity. Literally, people have been reported because they look suspicious.
Yeah.
What constitutes suspicious? He was wearing a hoodie.
Yeah.
And he had the hood pulled up. That's suspicious. People have been reported for that sort of thing.
Wow.
Why? Because people in banks, like judges, like teachers, like parents, like everybody, most people who don't live this stuff the way I do and some of my colleagues do, they don't know as much about it because I don't expect them to. Why should they? They know what they do.
Yeah.
And I hope they know it well and do it well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to presume to know what they do.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we do these webinars, is to educate our viewers and hopefully have them educate their friends and family and say, this is basically what they're planning on doing. We should be using cash more. And a lot of people will say, well, my check goes right into my bank and it's just more convenient for me to be using my debit card and that. What do you say to people like that? Like, is it better to go in and actually take out cash? Like,
if you understand the consequences, if you actually really genuinely do understand the consequences and that's your choice, great. But if you don't understand the consequences, and I mean, if I asked my bank what happens, they don't know. I came back from Japan and I know the answer, but I said, the kiosk to put in my customs declaration, is there facial recognition? And the fellow goes, I don't know. And he pulls over one of his colleagues and says, she wants to know, is there facial recognition? Goes, no, I don't think so. They use live facial recognition in the airports. And of course there's facial recognition. The people who work there, either they've been told nothing, they've been told don't say anything, they don't know, they don't care. It's just go through the line, please, just move ahead.
Yeah.
If you know and you choose, fine. But if you don't really know and you ask the people who also don't know, and they buy the products and the services from vendors whose main interest is their bottom line, not your privacy or mine.
Mm-hmm.
Who's benefiting by this? That's always an important question to ask. Follow the money. And it's true. And it doesn't matter your religion or your age or your political persuasion or your health. These things are affecting everybody now completely. So we have to start asking a lot tougher questions, informing ourselves. I tell people, you doom scroll for hours looking at cat videos and dog videos. Inform yourself. The information really is there. Learn how to discern whether it's a legitimate, credible source or somebody just trying to sell you something or scam you.
Yeah.
Learn.
That's right.
And then ask tough questions of our elected representatives at every level, whether it's the municipality that's putting in public safety measures with cameras on every street corner and microphones, because that technology is available for the 80,000 street lights that Calgary put in a few years ago. They don't talk about that, though, do they?
No, they don't.
We have to ask questions and insist on answers, and then ask questions about the answers we get, because it's now up to us to educate them.
So who do we ask the questions to? Especially like if it's in Calgary and we're talking about the streetlights, do we talk to our councillor? Do we talk to City of Calgary operations person? Like, where do we even go?
Well, for City of Calgary and other cities that use a 311 service, I mean, it used to be a whole lot easier because you say, you'd call up and say, I'd like to talk to somebody in the roads department, and you get put through. Now it's, what's your concern? We
Yes,
will pass the message along and someone will get back to you.
that
When?
is.
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
When's that?
Yeah.
I like specifics. So 311 is good as a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they do very good work, but I like the old way for some things. It's not so easy to get a hold of a department. It is possible still to do your own research. When people speak at conferences, they put presentations up, and very
Mhm.
often those presentations are posted.
Yeah.
And the very last slide is contact information.
Yes, that's
And
right.
that's a way of starting. So you get to learn how to be a bit of a sleuth and
Yeah.
find how to contact people, but certainly start with not only your ward alderman,
Yeah.
council member, talk to the FOI department, the Freedom of Information person in every municipality, or chief administrative officer in a smaller community. They
Mhm.
are the privacy and access person. Ask, depending what it's about, whether it's the fire department, the police department, parks, bylaw, a company, if you see that they're doing work for the city, ask them. They won't be able to tell you a whole lot, or they shouldn't tell you a whole lot. They might just refer you to the city, but you can ask them, who in the city do I talk to?
Yeah.
Start asking questions, raise awareness that you're interested in learning more about it. You want to know, you care,
Yeah.
because people care a whole lot more than the media and some elected officials would have us believe.
Yeah. One thing that another thing I wanted to bring up was we had a conversation before we went on air here about judges, and you went to a conference, and the question was, are the laws changing, or privacy changing so fast, and how do judges and lawyers keep up? And I want you to just tell the story about what happened with you in terms of a judge coming up and talking to you.
Well, I'll give this to you in a couple of different portions.
Yeah.
Do you remember a few years ago when credit cards, they were going to come out with chips?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, it was all the rage here.
Yeah.
And there was a conference held at the Deerfoot Casino,
Mhm.
and someone from the Calgary Police Department invited me to join the conference that day. Terrific. It was a good day to rob a bank, because I'm sure every RCMP,
Was there?
sheriff, municipal cop from Southern Alberta was there. Terrific. You look around, it was a sea of gray hair, though. A lot of senior brass was there. And I remember when the fella from Visa was up on the stage and he said, chip cards don't give any greater protection. They don't give any greater security. Actually, they give less, but it gives people a warm fuzzy.
Yeah.
And you see the deer in the headlights look from some of these senior members, sworn officers of the law. They have no idea what this guy is talking about. A young cop, she and I ended up talking. She said, I need to know what this is about, because I'm the one, when someone calls the police, I go to their home. I go and sit down at their kitchen table, and I have to help them, and I don't know what this is about.
Yeah.
She was probably in her late 20s at the time.
Yeah.
University educated. She doesn't know what this is about. Move the clock ahead. As you mentioned, I went to a conference in Montreal a few years ago, and it was all about privacy. And you end up talking with the person next to you and talking to the fellow next to me. He looked to be, I don't know, mid-60s. I don't know. And turns out he's from Montreal. Oh, what part of Montreal? Where'd you go to high school? I grew up in Montreal. So you start comparing notes. Oh, you went to that high school. I went to chit chat. I said, so, I live in Calgary. Where are you these days? Montreal? I says, no, I live in Vancouver. Oh, yeah, I'm a judge there. I'm on the bench. And I said, oh, so you're here just to brush up on the latest changes in case law? He said, no. And he's sitting there with his arms, his elbows on his knees and his head down. He's looking at me kind of skulkily and goes, "No, I'm here to learn. I don't know what this is all about. And I'm adjudicating cases already. I don't know what this stuff is about. I'm here to learn it."
Wow.
So
Because
I did
there's
research more recently and confirmed my worst suspicion when it comes to this. When somebody is appointed to the bench, within the first 5 years, they have to take 2 courses, one on criminal law, one on family law.
Yeah.
That's all.
And that's it.
That's all. The presumption is they will continue to educate themselves, and whether it's following new decisions and the latest law journals from Canada and elsewhere and case law, sure. But about technology, are they required to? Is it available? It would be nice if it was. If we knew for sure and had the reason to trust that they know what they're adjudicating, that would be great.
And that brings up the interesting point about they're actually making case law. They're actually presiding over cases that are going on right now, and they are coming up with verdicts, setting precedent, and they still don't really know what's happening in terms of privacy.
They might not,
Okay.
but it's like anything else. They take the word. They have no option sometimes but to take other people's word for it.
Yeah.
The experts, the consultants, the people who sometimes have a biased view. If you're brought in by defense counsel, you're going to say something to help the defense. You're going to be unbiased. You're going to present the facts, but there's other facts you might not prioritize if it doesn't help your client. Same thing on the prosecution side. So there eventually is a balance if both sides can pay for the equivalent caliber of expert.
Yeah.
But it's like a procurement person in any organization, whether it's public or private. If they don't know what it is they're buying, someone says, "Hey, get a CRM, get a whatever type of application or system." Okay, so we'll put an RFP together, we'll get bidders in, and we'll pick from what they say. We don't know exactly what to ask when it comes to privacy. We're going to have to take the vendor's word for it that they are going to do whatever they do according to privacy law, but we're not sure what that is, so we can't challenge them on it. So again, we're at the mercy of the vendor, whose main interest is their bottom line, not our privacy, not us being able to meet our legal requirements, our obligations under the law to only collect the personal information that we actually need and have a reason, a valid business or legal reason to collect, that we only process what we need to, not collect it just in case we can use it someday in the future.
Yeah. So I'm assuming privacy is a big business. Like every corporation and every company, every school, they all deal with some sort of privacy, or do they? Like, are there people that are actually employed as a privacy coordinator, or is it just, what, we'll throw it to HR, we'll throw it to a lawyer?
Well, yeah, lawyers, sure. And, I've gone into clients and said, I'm happy to sign a non-disclosure agreement and, this, that, and the other thing about privacy. And they say, okay, well, we'll give it to our lawyer, who, they'll take care of the privacy side of it. You just have a look at this system. Oh, okay. And what area of expertise is your lawyer? Oh, they're really good on contracts, or they're really good litigators, or what?
Yeah.
To me, that's like saying I'm going to have my nose job done by my proctologist because they're both doctors.
Wow.
There's some transferable skills, yes. But unfortunately, a lot of Canadian companies have not done a whole lot when it comes to complying with privacy legislation because really, there's no penalty. And actually, in the 20 years that PIPEDA has been in force, the Federal Privacy Commissioner of Canada, they do surveys every now and again. And they did one fairly recently that showed 54 or 56%, barely more than half of Canadian companies that they surveyed have privacy policies.
Yeah.
or even have designated somebody to be responsible for privacy issues. That's a basic fundamental thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't take 20 years to figure out. And that they haven't even bothered complying with. So yeah, there are some organizations that do have a privacy officer, a privacy department, particularly if they're a large organization that works in different jurisdictions. But here's one. I was at a conference in Montreal a couple of weeks ago, and it was the privacy officers from airlines around the world. I was talking with one from a major American carrier. I cannot name names, and you'll understand why.
Yeah.
And he said, we have in my department more people working on privacy than all of the other major carriers combined.
Wow. That's great. But wow, that just shows how much they care and how much labor there is involved in privacy.
There's a lot of work to be done on all sides of it, but privacy, and I've seen this throughout my career, it's the wrong side of the ledger. It doesn't generate revenue.
That's right, it doesn't.
It's a cost, like paying your insurance. Everybody grumbles until there's a claim. Yeah. And when it comes to privacy, especially when there's no penalties or the company is penalized but not a person.
Yeah.
Like with Meta, if the company is fined, it's a line item. It's a reduction in tax liability.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah. It's almost meaningless. So, when SOX came in after Enron, if anybody remembers that one, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in the States came in. It was a financial accountability law saying that the senior person would now be personally responsible, and if something happened, they would be facing $1 million fines and jail time.
Yeah.
Companies, including in Canada, scrambled to become compliant with SOX because there is a personal penalty.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Not here yet.
Oh, not here yet. I was going to ask. Oh, wow.
No, companies. But I mean, the Alberta commissioner has the power to order fines, and every now and again you hear that, a nurse looked at a patient's file that wasn't one of her patients and has been fined $10,000, or another individual was curious and snooped in some files and they get fined. Yeah. Yet you go back, 8 or 10 years maybe, where IBM went to pick up some backup tapes from the Department of Health, Ministry of Health in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. The backup tapes got lost. There was an investigation.
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah. And the outcome of the investigation was that they had tightened up processes, and now when the courier came to pick up the tapes, the backups, they would sign for it so that there was a consistent chain of... Yeah. Was anybody held accountable? Did anybody get fired? Was there mandatory training?
No idea.
So.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I would hope so. All right. We're gonna answer some of the questions that have come up here. We'll do about 10 more minutes here, and then this has been great. I'm definitely gonna say we'd like to have you come back and talk a little bit more about privacy, and I'm sure lots will change, especially depending on the state of Bill C-27. So when you do come back, hopefully you'll be able to bring in some insight into that. So. Here, a question right from the get-go here was, what about digital Bill of Rights? In terms of, I guess, is there such thing, or can we make a digital Bill of Rights?
Well, a Bill of Rights would be really nice, but if it is something, if it is by law and required, do we need a separate Bill of Rights? Because again, that's going to take a long time to hammer out. Yeah. Why not just declare that Canada recognizes privacy as a fundamental human right in keeping with the UN Declaration from 1948. If it's going to be a voluntary thing, then I look to the voluntary codes of practice and customer bills of rights that we've seen from the advertising industry, from the automotive industry, from other industries, to say, yep, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to be ethical. We're going to comply with this voluntary code of practice. But we're not going to do it yet. But the others can, by all means. But we absolutely support it, and nothing comes of it. because it's voluntary.
Yeah.
And it's a cost to them. It doesn't improve their bottom line.
So a question about please elaborate on what SOX compliance is. I've heard the acronym a few times at work, and you briefly talked about it. And of course, we just literally talked about it. So I thought I'd bring that up right now. So what exactly happened with SOX? What happened with Enron? What happened with SOX? Kind of
back in, what was it, the late 90s, I think it was.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
There was a consulting company. There was Anderson Consulting. There was the big five at the time, five major global consulting companies, and Anderson was one of them. And an energy trader, I think Enron was. And there was a scandal, and something happened, and all of a sudden there's talk of and pictures of people shredding documents because this was a major problem, major scandal. And it was all about financials. And the US government investigated. A couple of people ended up in jail. Somebody high up in Enron killed himself because he was going to be facing, have to face the music. Anyhow, they brought in this new piece of financial responsibility legislation, Sarbanes-Oxley, that said, and I remember when they announced it, they said, and from now on, the executive is going to be responsible for what's in the financial statement of a company. Mm-hmm. And I laughed and thought, they already are. Except it had never been enforced.
That's right. Yeah.
Here's the financial statement. Okay, so money went sideways. You can't identify where it is. There's problems. Who do you talk to? The company. No, now SOX made it change. Now under SOX, it is a person. It is a member of the executive. They personally are on the hook. Yeah. And that's when things changed, when there was personal responsibility and accountability imposed. Yeah. And you can't get out of it.
That's right. Let's jump to a different question here. Can you add a link to Tor and other resources as discussed? Do we have any links or anything that you can think of off the top of your head? If not, we can always add them in later too.
The Tor browser, it's a download. You download the browser.
Yeah.
And they don't keep any information about you. None. Them and Signal. Those are really two of the best at this point, because the way they work, they don't keep any information about you. They don't ask any information about you. The other one is Proton. They're out of Switzerland, and you can use a cloud there. You can have email through Proton.
Proton Mail, yeah.
Proton Mail, yeah. And they've got a VPN service. And I mean, there's VPNs available all over the place. And every now and again you hear that, that VPN, they had a good PR and advertising campaign, but they were actually taking all your information anyhow. Mm-hmm. Again, do your research. And it means digging, because very often there's no contact information. Send us an email, send us information on a contact form. There's no one to talk to. You get bounced around. No one calls you back. To me, that's a red flag. Yeah. It really is. Or you end up talking to a salesperson, but do your research. This is your privacy. This is everything that you discuss. And we have someone in Alberta, Senator Paula Simons. She used to be a journalist. She's been a senator for years. And we invited her, the Privacy and Access Council invited her to speak at a conference not too long ago. And I remember she talked about her family history, German lineage, this, that, and the other thing. And she said, governments aren't always benevolent. And governments that today are benevolent might not be tomorrow. So what you say today is okay. And then if things change tomorrow or next week or next month, and someone goes back and has a look and says, you posted something on Twitter, come explain yourself.
We've seen that. Yes, we've seen that. Lots of friends of and family that I know, even on Facebook, they were shut down for 30 days because of something that they put 6 years ago.
Yep. Do you remember the McCarthy Red Scare era? Probably read about it in history books. I did. Where it was the Un-American Act or something like it. It was about communism. They were afraid in the States that communism was coming in, and Senator McCarthy would haul people in and say, "We think you're a communist. Explain yourself. Prove to us you're not."
That's right.
And what ended up happening is like what happened in East Germany, where people would snitch on their neighbor to deflect attention away from themselves. Wow. We've seen people snitching on neighbors in Canada too lately. So
yes, we have.
Tor browser,
yeah.
DuckDuckGo as a browser. There's a few of them. If you want, I can send you a list of some of these.
That would be great. We can
resources
post it in the notes for sure. Yeah.
Sure, I'll do that.
Here's a statement. Wendy says, Sharon, we're all compromised. It is too late. Phone calls can now have a bot on the other end that sound like me. I think it's all too late. I'm going to throw up my hands and say, no, everything is compromised. What do you say to that?
An awful lot already is compromised. We have been like boiling frogs. It has crept up on us, and we have allowed it to happen because we didn't know any better, and we trusted, and we did all the things that we've been raised in this culture to do. Trust authority, obey, do as you're told, don't talk back, don't ask questions. Who do you think you are? That's right. So you go along with it because you go along to get along, right? And I've been told the same thing for an awful lot of years, and that's not me. I ask questions. Have I been compromised? Of course. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to roll over and post my birth certificate and my bank statement and my passwords. There are some things I'm not going to make it easy. I do lock my door on my home and on my car. Mm-hmm. If somebody wants to break in, I'm going to make it less convenient. I'm going to change my passwords. I'm going to use strong passwords. I'm going to use different browsers. I'm going to ask, why are you asking for that information? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's store policy. Good, but what's the reason? Store policy is not a reason. Why? And then, if it's a reasonable explanation, okay, yeah, you're right. You want my birthday to distinguish me from the other Sharon Polsky. Mm-hmm. Okay, it makes sense. Yep. Give me a reason. Ask questions. It will also make the people who are asking for your information think. Yeah. And that is important, increasingly. Yeah. It's not too late. Don't throw up your hands. Push back. Yeah. And the more we talk, the more we ask questions, you know what? Maybe it'll help the people who could make the changes, who have the authority and the power to make the changes to protect themselves and us. Maybe it'll convince them. They'll see the light and realize, yeah, these people know what they're talking about. They've educated me. I'm going to lead the charge to make a change to protect my constituents' privacy, my children's, my grandchildren's. Yeah. I, the elected representative, have a responsibility, not just to keep my job, not just to keep my party in power, but to the people who elected me.
Wendy also says, so obviously while we were doing this, she checked the haveibeenpond.com, which is scrolling along the bottom. And she says, I just checked on Pond and this is exactly how she speaks, by the way. I just checked on Pond and I have 15 breaches and 2 pastes. Now what do I do? Other than changing passwords or maybe using a different email, like what do you do?
Change your passwords to something. And if it was password 1, first of all, there are some standard, very, very weak passwords. Password. I love you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or password 1, password 2. Yeah. Those are so easy. Anything from a living or dead language, including Sanskrit. I have a friend who speaks Sanskrit, and everybody knows this is a dead language. It's not. If it's from a language, it's easily discovered and figured out because there's very sophisticated computer programs dedicated to finding out what these things are. Figure out something that works for you. Letter number, the acronym from your favorite book, and the street name 3 streets over. Yeah. Something obscure that you can remember that's meaningful to you. It becomes a pattern. It's a different password for each website you go to. Maybe it's a component of the website address that you embed, not the full address, but just something in it.
Yeah.
So you take the same something from each website and include that.
Yeah.
Figure out something that works for you that's hard to guess. But if it is an email that has been compromised, change it.
Yeah.
If that email is one that's attached to any prepaid accounts, your cell phone, your utilities, change it immediately and get in touch with the provider, your utility company, and ask them to put a password on your account, put a blocker on your account so somebody else can't call in, say, oh, well, here's the email address, and then take over your account, because that happens.
That's right.
Get in touch with the credit bureau. You can do this online. The two credit bureaus in Canada, last time I checked, you can do it online. You have to reveal your social insurance number and your birthday. They have that information anyhow, so it's a choice. But and you put a block on your credit record so that somebody else can't go in and apply for credit on your good name. And if somebody else does, credit bureau is supposed to get in touch with you. So if you've lost your wallet, somebody stole your car, and any personal information, the registration card, the insurance card, the mail that you picked up and left on the back seat, if any of that is in your car, call, do it automatically, put a block on your credit record with Equifax and TransUnion.
Yeah. Great advice. I'm going to do one last question, but it's actually kind of two of them. I just have to find out where the second one went to. Do you have any insights on digital ID? And I'm assuming it's more like, say, the Alberta digital ID. And then the second part is also, what about our health records? Are they shared between other companies, or are they just on your doctor's files? Do you have any insight on that? Is that going to be a 2-hour conversation?
Digital ID. You go to Europe and everybody carries around a digital, a national identity card, which is great. They've been doing that for decades. Of course, during World War II, it also made it really easy to catalog who's in the city and where you came from and where you went to. Now we have a digital being promoted because there's a lot of people in the world, and it's true, there is literacy problems in a lot of countries in the world, and they don't have the luxury of hopping a bus and going to the registry and getting their picture taken, and they don't know how to write or how to read. It's a fact of life for millions of people. Digital identity will help them. But when everything is required to be embedded in a digital identity, and who controls that? That's the question I want answered. In the early days, I asked TELUS, I was a TELUS customer, and I said, so I asked the Privacy Commissioner's office at the time, I said, the law says that the person who controls the information is responsible for it. I have a cell phone. I cannot change any information on my account. The phone company does. I cannot encode my phone. I cannot change the phone number in my phone. I cannot do a lot of things in my phone except use it. So if I lose my phone, who's responsible for the information? And they gave a great long explanation, and they discussed this and they analyzed that. And the bottom line was, that's a good question. What happens when all of your information is embedded on your phone and the phone dies? You go to hospital. How do they get any information off of it? Never mind your phone dies. It got smashed.
Absolutely.
In the vehicle when there was a crash. They can't figure out who you are. And you don't carry anything in your wallet anymore because that's paper and that's so old-fashioned. So there's physical life-changing risks to digital ID. There's the risk of, again, central control. And increasingly is being billed as to prevent fraud, to be more convenient for us, because we won't have to carry all sorts of things. We can just carry our phone, but not everybody has or can afford a phone that's capable of that. So how do you accommodate for them as well?
Yeah.
You get arrested, everything gets taken away and put in a locker somewhere. I don't know. How do you call someone? We don't remember phone numbers anymore. They're all in our phones. Call mom, call George.
That's very true. Very true.
We used to remember. Computers have made us stupid. They killed
I'm
our
not sure what area of the brain that I used to remember phone numbers. I'm not sure what it's doing right now, but it's certainly gone.
Yeah. And then, health records, pandemic you were talking about before, everybody was told, don't go to a doctor. There's sick people there. Of course there are. Yeah. Don't go out, go online. There's a new service. It's telehealth, telemedicine.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And it's convenient. But now I look, there's a company out of the UK, Babylon Health. TELUS bought Babylon in Canada. Babylon itself has gone bankrupt. What happens to all the health records they amassed? It's like Clearview AI. Do you remember that? No, not Clearview, Cambridge Analytica. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, that one?
Yeah.
And then Cambridge Analytica declared bankruptcy. And what happened to all the records of all the people that they had collected?
Yeah.
It's an asset. It is a business asset. And they sold it to another company that they had created. And no one talks about it. It's gone. They have your information. You have no contact with them. You have no relationship with them. You didn't agree to it. It's a business asset that was collected with your consent.
That's right.
And so, health in Alberta, keep in mind, under the Health Information Act, we don't have an option to say no. So our information is collected.
Yeah.
It is used.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to say no. So when there was one article in the newspaper about it at the very beginning of COVID that said a brand new lab had been set up. It was a collaborative effort between, I think it was the University of Alberta, an Edmonton hospital, Calgary University. Don't quote me.
Yeah.
There was, I think, 3 of these. They created a new lab, and apparently every swab was sent there. Every swab contains DNA.
Yeah.
And is there for research. By who? I don't know. Is it by Alberta Health? I don't know. Is it by a pharmaceutical company? I don't know.
You're right. I'd imagine most people in Alberta got swabbed at some point in their, the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that information gone?
That's right.
Correct. You are correct. So even if you didn't get vaccinated, chances are someone out there has some information on you.
It's very, very possible. I go to my doctor's office, on their screen, it's TELUS Health.
Yeah.
Is it actually TELUS? Is it another company that TELUS bought and has branded as a TELUS company, which I think is the case. Might not be, but I think that's the case with a lot of large companies, is they acquire other companies that have specializations so that they can diversify and broaden their revenue generation capacity.
Yeah.
And who has access to that information? And where is their help desk? Because if the help desk is outside of Canada, or you call to make an appointment and you get the confirmation by text message from a service in the States, did you authorize it? I didn't.
Well, this has certainly been eye-opening about privacy. Now I'm just going to stay in my basement and not go out and do anything.
Don't go out. Pay cash. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Look at the camera.
You're
I went
right.
to London with my husband. We did a double-decker, and the bus stopped at a red light.
Oh, yes.
And at the corner is all these poles with all the cameras, and I'm waving at the camera, looking straight into it, and he's knocking my hand down. They know who I am. I mean, there was facial recognition coming into the country at the airport. Of course they know who I am.
Yeah.
But it's endless, and cameras don't stop anything. That's the killer.
Yeah.
They don't change behavior. They don't prevent crime.
Yeah.
And, no, I don't have a video camera at my front door.
Yeah. That's good.
I don't.
You don't have the Nest Cam or whatever.
No.
Whatever there's.
No. We could talk about this for a very long
Oh,
time because
I
there's
know.
no end of these
There is
issues
no end
that have been allowed to infiltrate in our lives.
Yeah. So what I like to do is to bring together the conversation we had in terms of how it affects Alberta prosperity. And from what I can tell, a lot of this privacy stuff is I'm going to say federally regulated. At least we know with C27. I'm assuming that there should be some provincial jurisdiction with this as well, right? We need to handle our own affairs and figure out how to deal with privacy in municipalities as well as in the province. And the thing about, again, about Alberta Prosperity Project is we're looking for solutions. We're looking for education. And if anything, if all this does is just wake up people to say the privacy thing is a big part of why we should be taking our own sovereign jurisdiction, whether it's your own personal responsibility of how you keep track of stuff that's online, how you deal with the cash. It comes down to basically trying to do it for yourself. And if we can somehow come up with a really good plan that would work in regards to a provincial jurisdiction, then we should be talking to our MLAs. We should be talking to our municipal leaders and making sure that, maybe we say, you were just talking about London and all these cameras out there. Maybe we actually have conversations and say, does there really have to be this many cameras up on the street corner?
Does Hidden Valley really need to be a smart city with that many cameras watching everything?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
ask questions. Absolutely. Because I'm not a betting woman, but I would bet that an awful lot of our municipal leaders, elected representatives, they don't know really what they've put in. And that's one thing. And if they do, that's something else entirely.
Yeah. We know that it's the bureaucracy. It's the people that have been working in the same job for 20 years that maybe are 2 or 3 steps down from the actual government officials. They're the ones that seem to have the most power and able to say, yeah, let's just put more cameras in and let's just do this because it's not going to affect me. And they just don't know. And again, we have to have this conversation with people and let them know that it does affect all of us.
Yeah. So. And the questions to ask the people who want to run for office, not only do you plan to do something, when will you do something and what will you do? When will you do that? Specifics.
That's right.
Yeah. So we can hold them to account.
That's right. Yeah.
I've enjoyed
this has been great. Thank you so much, Sharon, for coming on. And of course, I want to thank everyone for staying online. We're an hour and 45 minutes. Normally it doesn't go this long, but on a topic like that's so vast. And again, I'm going to get Sharon back on here in a few months and see what's going on. And it's great that people are engaged. They were asking questions, and thank you so much for coming on. And of course, we do weekly APP webinars every Wednesday with new speakers and new information as we go along. And next week's webinar, I don't know if you know Sharon, Dr. William Mackis, who we've had on the webinar before. I believe it was last November. Lots have changed in his research, and he will be giving us an update and report on what he's been finding. And you'll definitely want to tune in on that one. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much again. And we will wish everyone a good night. And thanks again. And I will fade us out here. Thanks, Sharon.